Here I am at Arden and Watt again, getting ready to kick off the final leg of this Corporate America tour on Arden Way. This will be part 3, and it'll take place from Bell Street to Arden Fair, and maybe talk about a little stuff beyond there, because Arden Way keeps on going. In fact, it goes a long way, eventually becomes Garden Highway and takes you to Discovery Park, which is where the two rivers meet. But we're not going to go that far today. I just want to say that I always forget to mention when I'm at Arden and Watt that about a mile that way, which would be north, is the old Tower Records at Watt and El Camino. And that was my hang in high school in the late 70s. Even throughout the 80s, I was always hanging out there at Tower Records or Tower Books. I think I spent more time at Tower Books, because you can, once you memorize all the records, then there's a lot of books to look at. But it was great, and my hairstylist at the time, I'd actually pay someone to do my hair back in the 80s. Her name was Dottie, and she was right there next to Tower Records. And that's next to the bowling alley, Candle Rock Lounge. The bowling alley Country Club Lanes started in 1960. My brothers were trophy winning champs there, I think back in the 80s or 90s. And Tower Records originally started in 1960 downtown at 16th and Broadway, but then a few years later they added the Watt and El Camino store, which eventually closed due to bankruptcy, and it might have been around 2005 when they filed bankruptcy, and that seemed like the store hung on a little more as a landmark until it became this British health food store for a while, and then after that became Dollar Tree. So anyway, Candle Rock Lounge right there at the bowling alley, that was Club Nah for a while and had other names, but Quad did promotions there. Country Club Plaza. It was a popular mall for a while that, you know, had wine stocks, a popular department store that started in Sacramento and grew to be a statewide chain until it got taken over by Federated, the company that owns Macy's, or did at the time in the mid-90s is when wine stocks went away. I did a interview with the author of a book about the wine stocks empire. Anyway, that gives you a little more insight on why Watt Avenue is such a popular street. I mean, for a while it was the gateway to Tower Records, like one of the coolest in town. And there was a movie theater there, Capitol Theater, but that's gone now. Okay, let's start our tour from Bell Street to Arden Fair on Arden Way. So we pick up the journey at Bell Street on Arden Way, and we got Carl's Jr. on one side and Jack in the Box on the other. Know your fast food lists of the differences between processed, ultra-processed, and unprocessed food. And a lot of these fast food places are just pure ultra-processed foods. That's what I stay away from. And right now, I'm gonna look at my notes, because so many brand names I'm gonna talk about here on Arden Way that I had to do a little research and kind of double check some things. The Cave, it's a buy-sell trade store that doesn't have just records and old magazines and posters, but they also have clothing, used clothing and used electronics. It's a family business owned by Andrew Radakovitz, and he was the owner of Dimple Records, which lasted a long time in Sacramento, like from 1974 until 2019. They had 7 locations. Pacific Audio's been there a long time. I think since the 80s or maybe even longer. And like I said, there's lots of audio, particularly car audio stores on Arden Way. And lots of car shops, tire geeks. That's kind of new, I think. I don't think that's been there a long time. Next to that, Colucci Town. That's been there 8 years, according to a lady at the front desk when I went in there and asked. I've never eaten there, but it seems like it might be okay. But then again, like I just don't eat out at restaurants a lot, partly because all the processing that goes into the food, plus it's expensive compared to normal food. But that might be a place I would check out sometime, just because they have live music there sometimes. This cool triangle building across the street, that's a state building that it's owned by the state, and there's lots of state offices there. There might be some private businesses there as well, but it's not the kind of place where you could hang out. Yeah, although it used to be where a radio station was located, KSFM 102.7 used to be located here, like until 2010. Definitely not in the 80s when they were in Woodland, but I think probably sometime in the 90s, like during merger mania, they moved here. It's quite a nice facility. And at one time, radio was a booming industry, like in the 90s, so there was extra money to spend on places like this. More car places. Arby's has been here a long time. At least since the 90s. I actually used to eat here. And they were part of Wendy's at one time. Next to the Triangle building is what was formerly Walgreens, but it closed down in the past few months, and they've closed several locations. It's just hard for them to turn a profit in the era of high-priced pharma. There's Del Taco at the corner. That's been there a long time, since the 90s, maybe longer. They used to be part of a company called Noggles. But since Del Taco is based more in the Southern California area, and it used to be like more of a family business, and then just grew. So here it is. How about Arden? A very popular, busy intersection. Nordstrom, I don't really shop there. Century Theaters, at one time, that was a monumental place in my life. I mean, we did movie premieres at Quad at Century Theaters, but that's when it was a dome building. They changed it into a square box building, like in the past decade, and it kind of ruined its heritage, in my opinion. Michael's, that would be the place I would go to if I needed art supplies. It'd be one of my picks. And across the street is McDonald's, of course, a toxic trash center where you can get all kinds of processed food, ultra processed food full of industrialized chemicals and maybe some pink slime. Around the corner from Del Taco is Batteries and Bulbs. That's where you're guaranteed to find overpriced batteries and bulbs. You're not gonna get any good deals there. Like, you might find $13 a battery there for something that might go for $1 at Dollar Tree. But part of it has to do with batteries are imports, usually. Not too many are made here in America. So now Trump wants to slap on tariffs to make prices go even higher. Jamba Juice, that's a place I would think about occasionally, and I go to occasionally, but it's not top of mind or a favorite place because I don't think it's organic. Starbucks, like I said, I never go there. It's just Not on my list. Coffee has never been on my list. There's a Punchline comedy place here that has been here a long time, like since the 90s or longer. Quad used to do promotions. The comedians would come on the air and promote their shows. So there's Total Wine, spirits, and beer and whatever. I checked that a few times and they don't really have much organic drinks there. So I never buy anything there. Stanton Optical, that's more for, I think, high price eyeglasses and stuff like that. I do fine with the dollar glasses at Dollar Tree, just for reading. I don't need glasses for anything else. Behind Total Wine is and that's a kind of a small chain. It's not this giant corporate chain, and that's been around since like the 90s, I think. Behind there is Guitar Center, which I do shop at occasionally because it's a big music store and they generally have good deals on musical instruments. So Guitar Center moved here in 2000. IHOP, of course, that's been around forever. I don't know if that one's been there forever, but it seems like it's been there a long time. I don't go there. I don't go to Chili's. At one time I did. I'd meet people for lunch at Chili's. And there's Buffalo Wild Wings. That's another place I just don't go to. The Container Store. Do they have any containers that I want? Not really. I mean, they have a lot of unique containers that I like to look at from time to time, but I've never bought anything from this store. You can't see it from this area, but we're not far from Home Depot, where I do shop from time to time. Home Depot just has a lot of everything, you know, a giant box store for building and experimenting with hobby type stuff. When I was in junior high, I took wood shop, metal shop, and electronics. So I had a good background on how to create things. And so Home Depot has all of that stuff, you know, wood, metal, electronics. That's Cheap is a large store full of furniture and home appliances, and they usually have pretty good deals there. There's Burger King. It's been there forever. Behind there are some other junk food places. In-N-Out Burger. A lot of people think that's a leaner version of McDonald's. Even looks like the same kind of place. But I figure it doesn't matter. I don't like eating at any of these burger places, especially Burger King. Off in the distance is Best Buy. It's been there since 1999. And before that, it was a different building. But it had weird architecture where the corner would come out, and the store was called Best Products. It had nothing to do with Best Buy, a completely different company. But Best Products was a unique mail order place where you'd go in and look at, it was a showroom for their catalog of unique items. And it lasted there from like 1977 to 1996, and had, again, unique architecture. There are only 9 of those type of buildings made across the US. Anyway, Best Buy, I do shop there from time to time for electronics. I think I even bought my Mac there in 2011, an iMac, and it still runs in 2025. I also have a MacBook Pro, a newer thing that I don't even like as well as the old iMac. I bought the iMac like a month before Steve Jobs died. And after he died, the company, Apple, just turned into kind of a different company. They went more mainstream. They started playing follow the leader instead of being an innovator. And they started copying like Google and Microsoft and those kind of companies. So I still think Apple is a quality company. It's just, I don't think it's as good as it used to be, because they used to focus on durable products, and now that's not even part of the question. It's built-in obsolescence where, you know, every few years they want you to buy a whole new computer or just other gadgets and stuff. FedEx Office, formerly FedEx Kinko's. They used to be separate companies that merged together, but FedEx, everyone knows that. I go here sometimes because they have internet. You can pay to get online. So if my internet service is ever down, I come here. Or if I need office supplies, this is all right. I'm just right next to Cheesecake Factory, which at one time I thought was on the verge of going bankrupt. But it's still here. It's been here a long time. AT&T, who cares anymore? I've had them, been there, done that, ditched them. California Pizza Kitchen has been here a long time, been here since the 90s. I remember, I never went here, but there were restaurants near here where record people would take me from Labels to eat for lunch or dinner. Crunch Fitness, I don't think that's been here a long time. Pier 50 Sushi Bar, that seems new. Barnes & Noble has been here a long time, since the 90s at least. Next to that, Party City, another company that seems like it's had trouble flirting with bankruptcy. I don't know, it looks shut down at the moment. And somewhere here there used to be a Virgin Mega Store, and that was cool back in the 90s, owned by Richard Branson. He eventually sold it in the 2000s, but it was a cool place to hang out because you could put on headphones and listen to music. And it's a good way to find out about new music. But of course, you know, the digital world took over, internet music, all that stuff is what wiped it out. This car place is called, I think, Licky Molly. I don't know much about it. This used to be Goodyear Tire, long time, for many years, and I would actually go here to get my tires fixed. After a while though, I got sick of having a series of leaky tires and stopped coming here, and then the problem went away. Macy's, that's still open. That's one of the few Macy's left in town. You know, the downtown Macy's store on near Old Sac and the Tower Bridge, and they say they're closing it in April of this year. And that's bizarre because I've known that place all my life. I used to go there as a little kid. My mom would take me there, and we'd eat there. They had the Lions restaurant there, and then anything that had to do with Old Sac, like holidays and fireworks and all that stuff, we'd go there. And it was a cool part of downtown Plaza, but no more. That just blows me away that something that started, I believe, in 1962 is when that Macy's store opened. And that was the year I was born, so I actually outlasted something iconic. With this particular Macy's here, this used to be Wine Stocks, which was a, you know, California chain mostly, and a department store back in the 70s and 80s and 90s. And eventually eventually it got bought out by Macy's, or the company that owned Macy's, Federated, and this has been Macy's ever since the late 90s. There's JCPenney. It made a comeback here because it went through bankruptcy at one point in the past 10 years, and then reemerged as kind of a more scaled down department store, mostly clothing. Sears, at the end of this trip, it's now an empty store at the end of this mall. But it was the original anchor store of this mall when it was built in 1957. Here's one of the few places where I'm likely to shop at Arden Fair Mall. I just don't buy much here. But the Apple store, since I own Mac computers, I'll come here and ask their gurus questions whenever something goes wrong or if there's something I need. Oh, it's Easter time, so there's Easter scenery in the background here. I should say that this mall was remodeled in 1989. It became a two-story mall that year. Prior to that, it was just one story. There's a big empty place that used to be Sears, the iconic anchor store of this whole mall. And Sears at one time was one of the top companies in America. Of course, it started in the late 1800s as a mail order catalog company. And I mean, throughout my life, it was always a great place to buy almost anything imaginable, from records to clothes to tools to whatever. And they partnered with iconic brands like Black & Decker. And then they got taken over by a hedge fund in the 90s, and that was the beginning of the end of this company. So whenever a hedge fund takes over something, they're trying to invest in it and flip it to some other owner, unless they can't find a greater fool at the top, so it goes bankrupt. That's what happened to Sears. It's funny because my only time on national television was on CNBC, on Jim Cramer's Mad Money show, and I deliberately asked him about Sears stock, and I deliberately asked him because I knew it was his favorite stock, and I got him to get wild about it and say, you know, best company, best stock, and that was in 2006, and then it filed bankruptcy 11 years later.
Let's go to Alex in California. Alex!
Since your prophecy has come true on SHLD, Sears Holdings, and it hit a 52-week high again today, are we at Mount Everest, or does this thing keep on going?
My friend, this is K2 on its way to Everest. Shield, which is another kind of a very flip way to talk about Sears Holdings, has been, without a doubt, the best store, if not the best stock in trade, which is why I own fractionalistplus.com, my charitable trust. Eddie Lampert, he is about to sell stores, I believe, to JCPenney, which has said in a meeting that they need some stores. He's got 3,900 stores. He's overstored. I want, even up here at 164, for people to buy Sears, because it's not done. It be going to 200, so stay with it and stay with Kramer.
So that just tells you that Jim Cramer's not really into picking long-term stocks. There's Forever 21, they're closing down here. This company and Kohl's bought out a bunch of Mervyn's department stores back in the early 2000s. Mervyn's was a cool place because it was one of the few clothing stores that always had my size. So Mervyn's then got, well, it started there in the mid 70s near Arden Fair, and then it got taken over by Kohl's, which is from Wisconsin. I knew all about Kohl's because I lived in Wisconsin for a while, in Milwaukee, and their senator at the time was Herb Kohl, and his family are the owners of Kohl's department store. But the Kohl's here in Sacramento, the one that moved here in like 2010, around there, it's closing down. It's very expensive to run these big box stores because of the energy bills and all that, and so we're seeing a lot of them disappear or transform into other things. In the same parking lot where Kohl's was, and formerly Mervyn's long ago, are a bunch of stores like Five Below, Old Navy, and a few places I go to. Kohler's is the largest cannabis store in Sacramento. It's also kind of a nightclub sometimes. They have events there. And so that's as left-wing as the Arden Fair area gets, but in that same parking lot is as right-wing as it gets, which Hobby Lobby is owned by a Christian family who makes the news sometimes with their right-wing rhetoric. I try to see past that because it is a good art supply store and they have good deals, so I do shop there sometimes, and they have furniture type stuff there as well, and home decor. Now if you keep heading on Garden Highway, it eventually comes to where the two rivers meet, the Sacramento River and the American River, and right before there is a Discovery Park, and there's the I-5 freeway, which crosses the American River and crosses West El Camino, and that is exactly where you would find PBS KVIE Channel 6. And I actually interned there, spent some time volunteering at the PBS station because I wanted to learn something about television. And I think I learned a lot, especially how the teleprompter works, because I got to run that and I got to help research TV shows, like information that the host would want to know about something. So I became the assistant to the program director there at the time in 1998, late 98. And because I wasn't getting paid and my truck broke down, so I had to pay a bunch of money to fix it. And it just wasn't economical to work for free anymore. So that's why I only lasted at KVIE for 3 months. But it was a fun time. I learned how video editing works and stuff like that. Got to meet the general manager, who was related to someone who worked at KFBK. So anyway, I didn't think I was good for television anyway. It's never been what I wanted to do. Although my mom wanted me to be a TV anchor person on the news. I never wanted to do that though. But I liked being interviewed by TV. I was interviewed by Channel 10, Channel 3, Channel 40. So yeah, KCRA, I was probably on there the most. But anyway, after KVIE, I actually got a job working at E-Trade, which is a stockbroker, one of the first online stockbrokers. And that was in 1998 at the height of the dot-com bubble. And I stayed there for like 4 or 5 months. I just felt like I didn't really want to do that. And I found a business partner who wanted to do what I wanted to do, which was Sacramento's first internet radio station. And that was a little bit off Arden Way. That was on Fee Drive, not far from Arden Way, on near where Croy was, and KOVR. And that was a cool place because it was a video center where a lot of local commercials were made, a very professional place. I had an office there, and we called the internet station SAC Live. And it was just a cool place. It only lasted there a year because other things came up. But it was the beginning of the internet revolution. And it was fun to be a part of it. We played all local music on SAC Live. Wrapping up this journey, I want to mention some places that are kind of interest still today in 2025. We passed Exposition Boulevard, which meets Arden Way, there where AM/PM is at the corner. And Exposition is the street that Cal Expo is on. That's where we have the California State Fair. And there have been many legendary concerts at Cal Expo. Quad used to give away tickets to shows at Cal Expo in the 80s and 90s. And in the 80s, we were across the street from Cal Expo on River Park Drive, which is where KFBK ended up. And River Park Drive had a couple, it had a nightclub called Charlie Brown's, and then Twist and Shout is what the name changed to, and that was like an oldies nightclub. And so every now and then I'd run into radio friends there. Exposition also today has a restaurant called Rockin' Brews. And when I first saw the guitar neck sticking up several feet out of the ground, I thought it was Hard Rock Cafe, because that's what the guitar reminded me of. We used to have one downtown, on the downtown plaza where Macy's is. and that was also America Live for a while. But anyway, Rock and Brews is owned by the band Kiss. I went in there, or members of Kiss. I went in there one day in 2024 during football season to watch a game on the big screen because it looked like a sports bar place, and I thought it was Hard Rock Cafe, but they told me no, this is Rock and Brews, and it's like a burger and beer place, sports bar that shows games on big screens. And some people come there with reservations, so there's an upscale element to it as well. But they said it's owned by members of Kiss, which would be Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons, who I interviewed back in 1996 on Quad when Kiss was making a comeback tour, and they played at Arco Arena. And probably it's no surprise that Gene Simmons did most of the talking. But, you know, he was a good interview, very interesting. I could just ask a simple question and he'd just go on for several minutes about it. Anyway, it's interesting that members of Kiss own a, or anyone of rock star caliber has a restaurant in Sacramento. A few years back, Sammy Hagar had his own restaurant in Roseville, but it didn't last long. Some people told me that it was because the food wasn't that good and you had to wait too long to get dinner. But anyway, they had shows there, and I went to one and I thought it was all right. It had Tesla there. But anyway, there's only 13 of these Rock and Brews sports bar and grills around America. Actually 17. They've added a few in the past year, I think. So you might ask why, and it's because Sacramento is a great test market. It has the right demographics that reflect the national picture, so that's why a lot of things are tested here first. Anyway, if we kept going down Exposition Boulevard, we'd eventually reach I-80, the overpass, and on the other side of that is what used to be Beverly Garland Hotel. Beverly Garland was a Hollywood celebrity movie star from the 40s through the 2000s, and she had a hotel in Los Angeles called the Beverly Garland Hotel, and then another one in Sacramento with the same name. And that's the secret location of a lot of celebrities when they came to town. Like if they played the Music Circus or a Cal Expo, they would stay at the Beverly Garland Hotel, just kind of near I-80 and Exposition. And then that hotel went bankrupt in the late 90s. But I remember one of my best memories that I only went there one time, and the one time I was the DJ for the band The Monkees. That's right, the TV musical group. They did their comeback tour in 1986, and they did a secret quad listener party at Beverly Garland Hotel, poolside, and I was the DJ, the outdoor DJ, and I was the one who queued up the record, the Monkees theme as they walked out, and I announced them. So that was a fun time. My only time at Beverly Garland Hotel. And the reason the Monkees came and did a special thing for our listeners who were winners, who called in and won tickets on the air, was because we were the only station in town that was playing their comeback single, which was That Was Then, This Is Now in 1986. And we saw them later that night at Cal Expo. They put on a great show. So yeah, Cal Expo, that alone is like a big thing near Arden Fair, because Cal Expo, so many legendary concerts, and the state fair there going back to 1967. Cal Expo's a legendary place. On the other side of Arden Way, it's kind of in between Exposition and Arden Way, were some nightclubs and restaurants and some cool places that have disappeared. Luau Garden was like a great restaurant owned by Mason Wong and his family. He also ran the nightclubs there next door. Like Confetti was really popular, and then the Rage. Piranha Room, Shark Club, Alphabet Club, uh, just so many, some country places even, like they had Yucatan Liquor Stand, and In Cahoots, and then after that, later it became a place called Polyesters. Always seemed like a packed club no matter what it was called, and Quad did lots of live broadcasts there. Other clubs in the area were TGIF's, Tequila Willie's, Carlos Murphy's. I mentioned Charlie Brown's and Twist and Shout. And Rubens was a restaurant nightclub for a while back in the 80s. Couple other places I want to mention. KCRA TV Channel 3 actually had a studio at Arden Fair Mall starting in 2004, and it was there until 2008. That's around the time malls started getting empty, partly because of the financial meltdown of 2008. But while they were there, they would interview people at the mall. So I thought that was an interesting thing at Arden Fair that you don't normally see at a mall. So across from Arden Fair, a couple other places, Peppermill Lounge was a hangout for a while. Actually, many years for local celebrities. Media figures would be there because it was kind of an upscale nightclub. So it was kind of a place where the who's who of Sacramento would hang out. And that was near the Doubletree Hotel, which is a large hotel across from Arden Fair. Near there was Circuit City, which was a horrible place that deserved to close down and go bankrupt just because it was a poorly run business. It was like, for a while, it was just all kinds of household appliances. And then they tried to split it into like a computer type store to cash in on the computer revolution. And they just couldn't answer any of my questions about anything. They were a stereo store too for a while. I just thought they had the worst customer service, and then that was kind of their downfall. Turned out, when I later researched it, it showed that they started getting rid of all their experienced salespeople and replacing them with low-paid customer service people. Just a bad idea. In the parking lot with Best Buy, there used to be the fabric store Linens and Things, and that was a big box store, but that disappeared like 10 or 15 years ago. Same way with Toys R Us. It went bankrupt. Toys R Us was a big box store that had been there for like decades. It was a great place, but then they got taken over by Bain Capital, and that's the last I've heard of Toys R Us. Yeah, I remember as a kid in the late 60s going to Arden Fair for the first time, seeing Toys R Us and really being blown away by it. Right past Highway 160, we'd see a couple landmarks that are kind of historic for Sacramento. Hostess had their Wonder Bread bakery there for a long time, and that the only reason I bring that up, even though it's super processed food, ultra processed food, is that as a kid, it was one of my first field trips, like in kindergarten. We went to that bakery and saw how bread was made, Wonder Bread. And then they let us take home a tiny little miniature loaf of bread, which I thought was cute back then. Even though I would never eat that stuff now, not even a tiny little sample of it. Just super ultra processed, full of garbage chemicals, although probably not as much back then, because it just over time they just kept progressively adding more industrialized chemicals, like petrochemicals, stuff that comes from petroleum. Oh, and the making of plastics and all that. In the process, they're also making oils that go into food and medicine, and then it's linked to cancer, like I've talked about. But anyway, as a kid, we didn't know any better. Our parents didn't know any better. That's what TV said was cool and good. That TV's there to basically fill your head with brand names and make you stick with that world of brand names. Kind of like Arden Way is full of brand names, national brands. Okay, so wrapping it up, if we were to just go a little more distance, we'd be next to KOVR TV, channel 13. That was like the first time I was ever on television back in 1968 on a show called Captain Delta. I never got a photograph of it, so I drew a picture of me on the show. Because I'm an artist. I've been an artist since I was around this young, back in, I was in first or second grade when that show came on. It was basically a local TV host with a captain's hat, and he'd interview kids from schools all over Sacramento, grade school kids. And then the last thing I'd like to mention on Arden Way, besides I was DJ off of Arden Way at the Hilton's, Sacramento Hilton, which you can see off Highway 160. I was DJ at their club, the Pink Cadillac, which played oldies back in the early 90s, like 90, 91. Just a little further down Arden Way was what used to be the radio station Croy, which was one of the first radio stations I ever listened to as a kid. In fact, it was the first top 40 radio station I listened to keep up with the hits, starting in 1974. And that was the time I started getting hooked into top 40 music, and went roller skating at Fantasia Skate Center on Arden Way. And I got on the radio for the first time on AM radio in 1975 when they had a contest called the Win 10 Bin on Croy, in which they had 10 big prizes, and listeners would try to name the prizes, and if they named them all, they won them all. But that was part of what made Arden Way legendary. Even though I knew where Croy was on Arden Way, I never actually went there and looked through the window to watch the DJ. But, within 5 years, I was on the radio myself, but in high school. And then eventually, 5 years after that, I was on professional radio. So there you have it, our tour on Arden Way. You might ask, why look at all this stuff? Well, it gives you a little bit of history. It lets you know how much things can change over 30 to 50 years. We like to think of our neighborhoods as local culture, but a lot of it turns out to be national culture, especially since the 80s and progressively after that. It was because of Reaganomics. Reagan was president in the 80s, and he geared laws toward corporations taking over landscapes, local landscapes all over America, and that's what happened. Big Biz took over. That's our tour of Arden Way. 3 parts. So if you didn't get to see all 3 parts, just to let you know, there's 3 videos of this that go on for miles and miles and miles on Arden Way. And let's close out this video with, just like I did with the other 2, a song I wrote called It Didn't Happen in History.
History, that's what the mind benders say. It's not that big of a mystery, so go on your way. It didn't happen in history, or so Columbus wasn't first to find this land we say is so divine. The bows and arrows couldn't endure the cannons of the colonists.